Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice for radio. So today, I'm going to show you a surprising deck, which has just had a little bit of success. It's Gallade, and it's Octillery. Now, it did see a top 16 finish at the recent Mexico Regional Championships. However, it also got a League Cup win. The lovely Matthias Moore sent me a message yesterday, basically saying, "Hey Ross, are you aware that I just crushed a League Cup with this list?" And there were notable players there, including Benjamin Pham and Garen Wagner. So the deck might now be good. I suppose it's time we had a good chat about exactly how it works. Now, the centerpiece here is Gallade. 150 HP is pretty nice for a stage 2, but really here, there's a couple of things in play. Firstly, the typing. Your one-hit KOing Tauros, which sees a lot of play, and Drampa, which sees an awful lot of play here. Now, it's not actually just the typing, because the attack here, for a double colourless energy, does 150 damage if you've played a supporter this turn. So make sure you're playing a high enough supporter count that you will be playing a supporter every single turn. Now, with a choice band, you're actually doing 180. So something like a Drampa would go down, weakness or not. And essentially here, we're now sitting with almost a holy grail of Pokemon. We've got a one prize non-EX, non-GX, who is one-hit KOing EXs and GXs for 2 prizes. But doing 150 also means that non-EX Pokemon, like Gardevoir for instance, are going to go down as well. There are very few Pokemon this attack will not one-hit KO. It's basically stage 1 and stage 2 GXs. If they're not weak, you will have to 2-hit KO them. But as a good starting point, being able to one-hit KO anything but a stage 1 and stage 2 GX, that's alright. And actually, if you played a Professor Kukui, you'd be doing 200, and a lot of the stage 1 GXs would go down as well. So that's pretty good. And then, of course, we've got the ability Premonition. You can look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put them back on top of your deck in any order that you like. That's pretty nice. And that combos very nicely with Octillery's ability, allowing you to draw until you've got 5 cards in your hand. So as long as you've got fewer than 5 cards in hand, you use Gallade to put the cards you want on top, and then Octillery to immediately draw them. And if you've not got any cards you like, you can always play something like an Ultra Ball, which will then allow you to shuffle your deck and try your luck again. And the combo between Gallade and Octillery here, it should at least be really quite obvious and quite good. But make no mistake about it, the combo of Premonition and Abyssal Hand is nice, but it's the attack sensitive blade that really makes this deck tick. Now, you might have noticed that he is weak to Psychic, which could be a slight problem, but when it comes to Gardevoir, it's a very similar thing to what I said in Gyarados videos lately. You're trading 1 KO for 1 KO, but usually these Gardevoir decks are relying on things like Drampa, so you should be able to get a GX KO at some point during the game, and that should get you a win. Fingers crossed. Now, there are some other Pokemon you want to be playing in this deck. You might need to play Tapu Lele, and you might need to play Shaymin. Now, like I said with Alex's Gyarados list, I think it was yesterday I uploaded the video, you don't want to use Tapu Lele, you don't want to use Shaymin. However, sometimes you need to get set up, you need to get rolling, and these cards will help you do that. The other thing to remember, of course, is that Sensitive Blade only does lots of damage if you played a supporter. Sometimes you might need to search Tapu Lele just to find a supporter. But it means that, something like a Lysander will bring your opponent's Pokemon in the active, and then you can KO them with Sensitive Blade. There's a really nice Sensitive Blade Lysander combo going on here as well. Although, there are, of course, plenty of other supporters you can use. You could also, and I think should, and both the lists I've mentioned did play, Tapu Koko, the non-GX. You're playing double colourless anyway for Gallade, so you can just attach a double colourless here and do 20 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon. I mentioned how stage 1 and 2 GXs are out of reach for you. Well, this is how you plug that gap. You use Tapu Koko a couple of times, spread 40 damage, or 60 damage depending on the deck, and then everything is in a one-hit KO range from Gallade, although I suppose I should say a 1 more hit KO, because you'll already have hit everything once or twice. Now, although neither of the decks did play this, all Stage 2 decks at the moment, and this is a Stage 2 deck, I would very strongly consider playing Alolan Vulpix. Beacon for 0 energy allows you to search any 2 Pokemon and put them into your hand. It's too good for trying to set up these Pokemon. You don't have to play it, and neither of the decks did. I just want to leave it out there as an option for something that you should very strongly consider playing. There we go. I've done it. Let's leave it there. And of course, anytime you play Alolan Vulpix, you could put one Alolan Ninetales in there, because it's got decent attacks for a double colourless. Now, there are a whole bunch of other key cards you need to consider in this deck. You will need to play recovery cards because you really want 6 Gallades during the game, so you need to be recovering them. And you can use Retsu Stretcher, the new card, which allows you to shuffle free Pokemon into your deck, or just pick one out of the discard. Brock's Grit is quite a nice one. That gets your energy back as well if you're playing basics. And don't sleep on Karen. And if you're not playing basic energy, then definitely Karen over Brock's Grit. Because Karen has the added advantage that decks like Vespiquen that need Pokemon in the discard will not enjoy it when you play a Karen. As with every evolution deck, and you're going to hear me say this a lot over the next year or two, Bridget, more specifically Tapu Lele on turn 1, using Wonder Tag to find a Bridget. You play Tapu Lele, you search a Bridget, Bridget comes out, grabs you 3 of your Pokemon on the bench, and now you're sorted. You've got 2 routes and a Remoraid out turn 1, for instance. Choice Band is very important to hit those numbers. 150 is a good number, but 180 is a great number. 180 will, most of the time, get you a KO on EXs and GXs, who aren't Stage 1, 2 or Mega. So for that reason, Choice Band here really is important to make sure that you can hit those numbers. You need to be playing a bunch. Silent Lab. Now, this is a card that Matthias played, which I don't believe was played in the deck that did well in Mexico. You don't need to play Silent Lab. But I'm a very big fan of Silent Lab here for very simple reasons. You are relying on evolved Pokemon. So you can play Silent Lab and you're turning off your opponent's abilities. Shaymin, Tapu Lele, Volcanion. I could keep going, but you get the point. It's not hurting you much unless you're playing your Lele. It is hurting them. It's a fun card to use. It's something I would certainly be playing around with. Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick. Now, again, this wasn't played by Matthias, but was played by the chap, I think it was Null Cabrera, who got top 16 in Mexico. Playing 1 copy of Maxie's is something I would very strongly consider. Very strongly. Now, you're not going to be able to use it all that often, although actually looking at his list, I don't really see one in Noel's list either. It doesn't really matter. Here, if you play this and it's the only card in your hand, you get to put a fighting Pokemon onto your bench and draw 5 cards. Now, often you're not going to have an empty hand, so this is going to be irrelevant. However, sometimes you will. Sometimes you've got an Ultra Ball and 2 other cards in your hand. And now that we've got Tapu Lele, this is much, much easier. Use your Ultra Ball, search for a Tapu Lele, use Wonder Tag so that you can grab Maxie's, so that you can grab your Gallade and pop them on the bench as if it was a basic. It basically cheats a little bit because it means you get a Stage 2 without having to evolve up into a Stage 2. Still not as good as an expanded when we've got cards like Execute and Computer Search, but easier than it used to be. Rare Candy is an important card for Stage 2 decks, allows you to evolve the basic right up into the Stage 2. Do not rely on it, ladies and gentlemen. You need to be playing a bunch of Kirlia, but you know what? It's still too good not to play. Mallow, in any deck playing Octillery, try and play at least 1 Mallow. Search for any 2 cards and put them on top of your deck. But then, of course, you're playing Octillery, so as long as you've got a hand of fewer than 5 cards, you can then immediately draw them. Mallow becomes exactly like Teammates. Speaking of which, you should be playing Teammates. I argued for this in Gyarados, I'm arguing for it here. Any non-EX deck, non-GX deck as well, where you are expecting to have your Pokemon KO'd regularly, like you should here, play Teammates. Because then, when you get a Pokemon KO'd, you get to search for any 2 cards and put them into your hand. And then, of course, Sensitive Blade does more damage as well. Yay! The last card you really need here is Field Blower. Now, Field Blower does a whole bunch of things, but the 2 primary uses here, getting rid of Fighting Fury bouts that on EXs would ruin the numbers, because they're all basics. And secondly, this Gardevoir that turns off abilities when it's got a tool attached. You use Field Blower, get rid of the tool, and turn on your abilities. Because although it's Sensitive Blade that we really like, the combination of Premonition and Abyssal Hand here is really what keeps this deck ticking over. Now, the big debate you need to have in this deck is, are you only playing 4 double colourless energy, in which case you'll need to use cards like Energy Lotto to find them, and Special Charge to recover them, or are you playing basic energy as well? Null went just for the 4 double colourless, Matthias went for some basic fighting as well, and the way Matthias said it to me was, you know what, Ross? Especially in the early game, there are a whole bunch of turns you just need to attach a basic energy. So, yeah. And also, of course, don't forget that if your Gallade can survive a turn, and with 150 HP, sometimes it will, then you can start attaching single energies and really accelerating those energy attachments. That's a decision for you, ladies and gentlemen. Consider it very carefully. Now, there is a comment section. Tell me if you think the little success this deck has seen this past weekend is a fluke, or whether in the current meta it's actually got a little bit of a chance. It'll be fun finding out. Make sure you follow me on Twitter @TheWassy. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe. And if you're wondering where the face cam's gone, don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. It will be back. The most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.